Good evening and welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. My name is J.P. Marzullo and I am identifying as a host tonight. Josh is still on that secret mission, so I'm not sure when he's coming back, but hopefully it'll be soon. I'm sure you're tired of hearing from me. But that's why we have great guests, right? So tonight my guest is Christie Elliott Peters. Right?
Yes, that's great.
And she is the president of the New Hampshire Federation of Republican Women.
Yes.
Is that right?
That is correct.
2 for 2. Awesome. So take it away. What would you like to talk about? Some things that you would like everybody to hear, but certainly your organization. What's your organization involved with?
Our organization is a women's organization in New Hampshire that dates back to 1944.
Almost as old as me. Yes.
It was started because there were women, we now had the right to vote, and they were starting to want to run for office and finding it difficult to be taken seriously in the man's world. And so we were started for a threefold purpose of electing, empowering, and educating Republican women in the Granite State, and we remain committed to that purpose today.
That's great. Do you have like training sessions for women, or how is that? I mean, how does that work?
Right. So we're made up of 8 local clubs across the state. So each one runs a little bit differently. And within those local clubs, you'd have monthly meetings to hear from candidates, to talk about election strategy, things they want to do in their communities. And then on the state level, we hold different leadership opportunity training days, and we just had legislative day last week where we brought a group of women up to the State House and we met with the Secretary of State. We held some training with the Leadership Institute in the afternoon and did a tour. We were able to have some meals with different legislators as they had breaks throughout the day.
Well, that's kind of fun. We always liked to eat when we were in the State House, so we welcome people like you coming in. I had a couple of quick questions. I don't usually do this, but my mind is starting to go, so if I don't write it down. So how did you, I want to know, I've known you for a while. I want to know how you got started to be, I think I know the answer, but an activist, and then to, chair these clubs. You're president of this one. So what got you started?
Okay, so if you want to go way back to the beginning, it was 1981, and Ronald Reagan made a visit to the State House. I was too short to see him. And
so they had a line like you do on the ride at the... Oh my God.
Well, no, it was the entire State House lawn was full of people, the whole thing. You couldn't move in the lawn, and we were probably 2/3 of the way back. I still remember where we stood. And my French Canadian father was also too short to help me. But we had met
Your mother wasn't that short.
No, but she had 3 of us. We were 1, 3, and 5 years old.
Oh my Lord.
And it was very important to them. They had actually voted for Jimmy Carter in the previous election.
Wow.
And regretted that and became Republicans. At that moment, my mother became a Republican when she voted for Ronald Reagan.
That's
and
great.
Never looked back. But we had met up with my father's boss, who was well over 6 feet tall, and he offered to put me on his shoulders. And so I saw Ronald Reagan, and I was absolutely hooked.
So he did that?
He did.
How cool is that?
He did. And then when I was in college, it was the time of Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky.
Oh, wow. Where'd you go to school?
I went to school at Bob Jones University in Greenville, South Carolina.
Yep, I'm familiar with that.
And I was a debate captain, and my debate partner, Cherith, and I, we got a group of people together, and we'd watch the news and talk about it. And from there, I graduated and came back to New Hampshire and was married and had a lot of time on my hands. And Sandra Ziem invited me to come.
Sandra Ziem.
Yeah.
There's an old friend from the past.
Yes. She invited me to come. She was president of the Nashua Club.
Okay.
Invited me to a dinner meeting where the guest speaker was Maureen Mooney.
We've had Maureen on our show, too. So I'm batting 1,000 so far. Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, and
so she was the guest speaker.
That was my first Federation event, and I went on to become president of that group, and I have not been out of the Federation since.
That's fantastic. You do a lot of great work, and people ought to know that. And you know, the fact that you're there fighting for everybody is really important. I have a couple other questions or items that I'd like to talk about. I believe there's a bill on the governor's desk today, because we talked about this about a week ago or so, protecting girls' sports, and that only a biological girl woman can compete in their sport. And some of the other things that have been going on now, it seems like more people are doing that now. Like the Olympics coming up. The male that won the women's race was a women's record holder. He's not allowed to participate. He wasn't chosen for the team. So I say, just use a man's bathing suit and try to make the male Olympic team. I mean, if he's that serious, but I'm really happy that but it's on his desk. What's going on there, do you think?
So we picked that that issue up pretty early on, before other people were really talking about it.
Wow.
Our former president, Elizabeth Girard, felt really strongly about it, and when Congressman Pappas and Congresswoman Custer had the opportunity to sign in Congress the bill to protect women and girls in sports,
right,
they did not do so. Now, that did pass the House, and that's as far as it went down there, but we decided to take a stand and put out a press release. And when we went to do that, I did a little research, and I thought, well, what are other people saying?
Right.
No one was saying anything.
So you set the precedent.
As far as I know, I don't know. But when I looked at that House bill down there, there was no one. Even the National Organization for Women was saying this is a terrible, terrible idea. We should not protect women and girls in sports.
Yeah.
And so I was a classroom teacher, among other types of education, in the last 25 years. And Title IX protections for women are really important. And this whole concept of allowing biological males to compete in women's sports really undermines all those gains that were made and celebrated by liberal women also. So it's just a confusing time and a confusing issue. So we went from there, and we decided that a great thing we could do is, back in January, when the New Hampshire Republican State Committee had their annual meeting,
right,
we put in a resolution asking the party if they would be interested in supporting the concept of legislation that protected women and girls in sports opportunities. And much to my surprise, because I've been there a long time, and it is very rare that anything is unanimous.
Yeah.
When the chairman called for the yeas, the noise was deafening. But when he called for the nays, it was equally deafening. So it was interesting to me to see that we found an issue that 100% across the board, the Republicans who were gathered on January 13 agreed that we ought to be protecting women and girls in their sports opportunities. So our legislative chair, Louise Andrus, is one of the prime sponsors, as well as another associate member, Glenn Cordelli, who I believe he's
been on the show several times. Mm-hmm. Yep. And
we are excited to say that that bill passed the House, and it also passed the Senate recently.
Wow,
and is sitting
good
on the governor's desk. And we certainly would ask him to sign that. And
and those of you who are watching tonight, you know, just pick up the phone or send him a text telling him that you want to have him sign that bill. And believe it or not, that does help at times. As we all know, our governor is his own man, so he's going to say what he wants to say and do what he wants to do. But I really believe he has daughters, I believe, and he's concerned about safety in women's sports. So get your pen out, Chris, and get ready to sign that. That'd be awesome.
It would be so exciting, absolutely phenomenal. We are standing by, ready to celebrate when and if he makes that decision.
I'm with you on that. So let's talk about schools.
Okay.
About what you've been doing and what's going on. By the way, she wears many hats, so try to keep up. I'm going to be taking notes too. So go ahead. Let's where we're at with that. What are you doing?
So I am president of the New Hampshire Federation of Republican Women, but I also am the district chair for SAU 39, which is Amherst, Mount Vernon, and the Souhegan Cooperative School District. So that's,
is that an elected position?
So the position to Souhegan School Board is elected, and then among the 17 of us, we choose our own chair.
Oh, wow. That's cool. You have 17 school members? I mean, school board members?
Yes. So 7 for Souhegan and 5 and 7 for 5 for Sauhegan. No, wait. It's 7 for Sauhegan, 5 for Amherst, or 5 for Mount Vernon. I definitely know that.
So what's going on there? I mean, what kinds of things are going on in our schools? We've heard all kinds of things, and you know, I'm a real advocate for homeschooling. And I'm also an advocate that, you know, a child should not be locked into their zip code for education. It doesn't work that way. They should have the same opportunities, because everybody always says, well, the poor people and different races need to go to good school system, so we'd like more money in this school system that's failed over the years, rather than saying, pick a school, where do you want to go, and we'll help you get there. So, right?
Even beyond that, so I'll give you a little bit of background about me. I began teaching school. I taught first grade right out of college when I was 21 years old.
Wow.
And that was in 1998. So that's how long I've been involved in education of every sort. In fact, even before that, I had been teaching in Kenya at a school in Nairobi.
Wow.
So
was that a mission, or?
It is a Christian school that is in Nairobi.
Okay. Yep.
And so from there, I had 4 children. We have a daughter who has some pretty significant chronic medical conditions. We ended up pretty early on moving to homeschool. And I homeschooled most of their education for the 4 of them, Joshua all the way through high school, Madeline and Chloe all the way through high school. They did do some dual enrollment. And then Isabella, when we got to the end, she said, Mom, it is only you and me here at home. And as much as I love you, I'm not interested in continuing this partnership.
No, was she just graduated high school or college?
No. She was 15.
Even.
She was 15 years old.
Oh, this is good.
And she is just the kind of girl who was never content to stay in her place, in her age, in her time. And so she had chased the older ones all along through her academics and gotten to the point where she was too far ahead academically to attend. There was a local private school that I had gone back to teaching speech and debate and English literature there. And she didn't fit there after a year because there was nothing else they could do for her.
So she was bored, and they couldn't teach her.
There weren't any more classes.
Wow.
And I had been also teaching science out of people's kitchens and things. And one of the young ladies that I taught was the daughter of Frank Edelblue, our Commissioner of Education.
Yeah, sure.
And Frank was telling me about this idea he had for free college, which was ingenious, and I think there are still maybe 40 slots for it. So it's called the New Hampshire Career Academy, and you apply as a rising senior, but you agree to stay for 2 years and finish that degree. So Isabella applied, and she loved it. She attended up here in Manchester at the community college and graduated at 18 with her associate's degree.
Oh my God.
And then
That's
side
great.
comment is that she spent the last year studying at the American University in Cairo, and she'll attend there again in the fall.
Oh my God,
so
how
she'll
cool.
finish at 20 years old.
Wow. So now it's just Mom.
Yes, right. So
That's why you're so busy.
So exactly. When she started going to school and the others were going to college, I thought, well, what could I do in my community that I have no one left to teach here? And I thought my local school districts they were talking about wanting to do more dual enrollment, they wanted to have individualized education programs. So you hear IEP, like in the special ed realm, but this was sort of that every child would be able to have their first choice. Every child would be met where they are academically and be able to go on to the next place where they want to go academically. Well, that is exactly how homeschooling works. My 4 children, each of them had a very different path, and I thought, well, I might have something to add here. Additionally, my bachelor's degree is in guidance counseling, and they had some issues with transcripts, maybe, that needed to be looked at. So I ran for the school board, and I did not win.
But you do that more than once, right?
Because why would the homeschool mom want to be on the school board? It must just be, well, homeschool mom, who is also known in town for being, chair of the local Republican women several times. And I had also been president of the New Hampshire Federation back in 2008. So I was pretty well known for being a Republican and a homeschooler.
Right.
But after several tries, they let me in, and we're all working very well together now.
That's good to hear. I mean, there's no reason why, I'm a firm believer in that. There's no reason why you can't work with people. You're going to still keep your core values, and but you might find some commonality, something that you can do in common, and forget the rest of the stuff for a while and focus on that. I think that's where we kind of missed the boat a lot. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And I think it's getting worse in New Hampshire because now the Washington politics have moved to our state. And I find that really sad. We have some great people running on both sides. I can speak to CD2 because that's for Congress, that's the area I'm in. And if you look at both sides, there's good people, on both sides. And we're not going to agree on a lot of things, of course, but there are some things we should agree on, like closing the border. Let's start with that, and abortion. And that's something I wanted to chat with you a little bit about, because every time I hear a Democrat speak, the first thing they bring up is abortion. And Cindy Warmington, running for governor, has a commercial out which basically says, if I'm elected governor, I will make sure that abortion is legal at any level. That's basically what she said. And I thought, well, you know what? I didn't know that governors make laws. I mean, I always thought I had an opportunity to make a law when I sat in the State House. So she doesn't even know that. And that really bugs me because she doesn't care. It's all about abortion. And every single candidate I've seen, whether locally or nationally, that's the first thing they talk about. Listen, I understand that it's a tough issue. When I worked for Ovid LaMontagne years ago, a woman dressed up like a pill dispenser, and attacked him about abortion pills at the time. And so I won't get into that because I feel very strongly about that whole thing. There's a lot of people who can't have children and would like to adopt. So there's ways to do this if you work hard at it. And if I've also said that there are certainly good ways to stop it from happening, from getting pregnant. There's enough, things that they have that can, pills and other things, but that's a whole other issue. So how do you feel about that? And what is the women's group? Do they train people on how to answer that question? Is there a message that we have as you have as a Republican woman?
Well, that's a very good question. And so maybe I will talk to you a little bit about my personal thoughts about it.
Sure, let's do that.
First, I will say that it is a red herring. Women in New Hampshire, they care just as much about education, the economy, the borders, and the other issues that face Americans as they do about abortion. So it's been hyped up to this is a life or death issue. I suppose it is in that sense, but
sure, yeah.
But as this is the only issue that women care about, and I find that a little bit insulting, really.
I found it a lot insulting, actually. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, when I've talked to people, like the cannabis issue too. When I was running, would you support it? No, I won't. I don't think it should be legalized, okay? And yet, that's all they're concerned about. And I actually have said to people, is that the main thing you're interested in? And I think you're right. The same thing with abortion, right?
Well, now with cannabis, though, if it were legal, people would care a lot less about the rest of this. So there is that.
There's that.
With abortion, I think that there's a few things to think about. One is we need to stop being afraid to talk about it.
Right.
We don't have to agree. When I taught speech, so I was a debater in college. I taught speech and debate since 2012, worked with a national league as well for homeschoolers. When you have a hostile audience, the first thing I recommend that my students do is find the place where you agree. We all agree that a woman considering an abortion, sitting in that situation, is not having a good day. So start there and figure out what is it that woman needs. And I think there are things that can be done on both sides of the aisle before we even get to the point where we disagree.
Right.
To start with, the research shows that most of New Hampshire is satisfied with the law that's currently on the books.
Yes. Yep.
But beyond that, there are some issues that have been on my radar since the early 2000s. One, when we talk about access to a safe and legal abortion, because that's sort of what the liberal mantra has been.
Sure.
In New Hampshire, we may have legal, we don't have a guarantee of safe. There is no certification process. There's no guidelines and outlines of who can perform abortions specifically, and there's no need to have hospital admitting privileges. So if you have an emergency, the person who's been caring for you is not the person who's going to continue caring for you. It's that continuity of care. Another problem I have is we don't keep any statistics in New Hampshire. We have absolutely no idea if there are adverse outcomes, how often there are adverse outcomes, how significant the adverse outcomes are.
Now, I know we've asked for those several times, more than once, and never gotten Planned Parenthood to give us anything.
No, but I mean, other states do require those to be kept. And I think the problem we have in New Hampshire is that neither side of the aisle wants that to happen. So when that bill comes up, often I have heard people on the conservative side of the aisle say, well, we don't want to have statistics kept because, or a bill passed to keep statistics because we don't want to look like we're supporting the concept. And it really has nothing to do with that. It's more about we keep statistics on other safety outcomes, and we could do this here too if we're really committed to safety for women. The other thing I think we could do better as Republicans, if a woman is going to choose to keep a baby in a crisis situation, how are we supporting her? How are we facilitating and making that happen? And I think sometimes that we rightly value personal responsibility, but we don't always pick up on our community responsibility. So I don't know what the answer is. I'll just tell you what the problem is. Those are just some of my thoughts, is that we first meet the woman who is having that crisis situation and figure out what that woman needs. And I think we could solve a lot of our problems.
So have you done roundtables with that from people, from different parties, different views?
We haven't done on that issue. That's one of the things that we're considering.
Because we learned a lot from that, right? I mean,
we did, yeah. Last year, the thing that we did that I enjoyed more than anything I've really ever done with the Federation was a series of roundtables featuring the presidential candidates. So we had just about every single one of them.
Yes.
And we sat at the table with them, and there were ground rules. So no aha moments, no gotcha questions. It was just talking about the issues that are important to women, which was all of them. We talked about the borders. We talked a lot about China, about fentanyl, especially talking about the things that are happening here in Manchester with the drug crisis, with homelessness, and realizing that some of the solutions to our local problems here do start on the national level. So we had really good success with those. Enjoyed them immensely. It was so fun to sit down and get to know the candidates and hear the different perspectives, like you say. So looking at this year going forward, now that we're done with filing, that we would maybe do the same thing with different candidates and women from our organization. Issue-based with different organizations is an interesting concept, but we haven't explored that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be a good idea. I'd like to hear that. The other thing is, I've said this on the air before, is that Republicans, for some reason, don't go to colleges to talk to students. And I don't mean just having some famous Republican come in to speak to them. I mean local people go in and talk to students. And that can be arranged, usually, through the person who's in charge of political science. That's the person you usually go to. A friend of mine, who you probably know as well, she just went to one of the colleges and met with the president of the college, just to let him know that she was running in the area. And she asked him, she said, how can I reach, the student organizations, political student organizations? He gave her the contact person that she should reach out to, who mentored those people in colleges. Believe it or not, these kids, they actually want to be more conservative. I really believe that. They need boundaries. Young kids typically need that, and in the long run, they'll be happy that you set those boundaries. Now, as far as the college kids go, they're away from home. They want to be their own person now, and some of them are really easily influenced. They have pizza parties, maybe the Democrat Party comes in, has pizza and beer maybe even at the party. I don't know whether that's true, but it could be. Be a good approach, I think, by the way. But I do think we need to think about the students as well. And having, I'm a senior now for quite a while, and I didn't see any of the candidates say anything about how they were going to help the seniors. It's always how we're going to help the younger people. I have a clue for you guys. You're only going to be young once, and you're also going to get old. You have no choice in that. Hopefully, you'll live many years and enjoy your life. But they forget the seniors completely. Pardon me, and that bugs me now, and it bugged me when I was younger even, because it just seemed to me like, hey, they put in all this time and effort in this country to do the things that make us great, to join the military, to join the Peace Corps at the time and things like that, and now we're just going to forget them. I think we need to concentrate on them too. If you look at the local elections, even for governor, I can't say this because it's too early in the race, right? But I'm not seeing any emphasis on how do you help seniors. I'm now on a fixed income, okay? The prices, inflation has gone crazy. And it's just insane. I must have gotten stronger, though, because I can spend $100 and carry one bag out. So I think as I got older, I got stronger. But I make fun of it, but it's true, and I would think young kids are concerned with that. Out of college, they must be.
With inflation or with seniors?
Inflation. They're not too concerned about seniors, and I know why. It's just
because you're going to live forever.
Yeah, right, exactly. But yeah, I'm just curious on that.
Yeah, and I think as far as inflation goes, they don't understand it yet because they haven't spent much time yet. At least so I can speak to mine. I have a 24-year-old who now has a job and is living on his own, completely responsible for himself. I have a brand new graduate who's trying to figure out what's next for her, and two who are still in school. My two who have graduated are starting to see how expensive it is to have an apartment, groceries, your own car, things.
Insurance is on you, though, right? It's still on yours till they're 26? Is that the way it works?
Yeah, so right now they can have insurance till they're 26, and then
that's another expense.
For our family, as long as you're happy to keep driving the car that we have, I'll keep paying that insurance as well. But
nice.
My son definitely has mentioned that
he's the one with the job?
He's the one with the job, and it's a very good job. He came out of college making what my husband makes.
Oh my, that's great.
But he had some student loans, not much, but he's been paying back his student loans. But to live life in the way that he's accustomed to living, and we are not wealthy people who are extravagant by any means, he's finding that it takes a much larger chunk of his paycheck than he prefers.
What does he do? Can you mention that?
Sure. He does back-end computer coding for a company and consults for the South Carolina Department of Revenue right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So
wow, that's pretty cool.
Smart guy.
Yeah, so he does your taxes for you.
No, I have an accountant for that.
You're not taking any chances. I was just thinking today, I saw on the news where Russia has now decided to bring some battleships and some of their submarines off the coast of Cuba. And they're about 30 miles away from the mainland now. Now, I remember, because I was young enough or old enough maybe to remember that John Kennedy, the Bay of Pigs. I can remember being in college, and we went right to the TV when we heard that this was going on, and I would say probably half of us decided we were going to join. But by the time we made that decision as a group, they had made the decision on how to handle that, right? But that's another thing. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that kids are concerned about. And certainly world events, climate. Younger kids are a lot more concerned about climate than I am, because I don't think we have this big crisis, and I don't think it'll be 10 years away before the world ends. I don't think anybody can predict that. And I can predict things out 40 years from now, right? And people remember I predicted it. And along the way, I will give them a plan on how to get to the 40 years, right? But I think they can't even predict the weather 2 days in advance. But yet they think they can compare the climate issues. I think the Earth probably is getting a bit warmer, but it's not from the reasons they keep picking. Clean air. Let me just finish that thought, because clean air, every time they mention how bad the air is, I look up at the sky in New Hampshire. It couldn't be cleaner. It couldn't be bluer. But if you went to China, you wouldn't even be able to look too far up into the sky, right? So.
Yeah, but do you remember in the beginning of COVID, maybe it was a month or two in, they started showing pictures of places in the world where there's usually a lot of dirtier industry, and suddenly they could see the sky that they hadn't seen clearly in years.
Yep.
So I think we all should be concerned about doing our best to be good stewards of what we have.
Sure.
But we also have to realize that a crusade to save the earth might be above our pay grade. I will say this.
Yeah, I would say maybe the 12 apostles had a chance to get that done. But.
So last week, there was a flamingo on Cape Cod.
Yeah, I did see that.
Okay,
yes.
and so I saw on Facebook.
It got lost.
Many of my wise Facebook friends or acquaintances saying this is sign that there is global warming. We've never seen a flamingo on Cape Cod before. We know the Earth is getting warmer because there's a flamingo on Cape Cod. But it turned out there was a hurricane that just picked up lots of flamingos, and a couple of them lived. So, and I mean, was the hurricane caused by global warming or whatever? As long as I've been paying attention to science, there have been shifts in cooling and heating, and I don't know the answer.
It seems to be cyclic to me. I mean, if you look at the charts don't look at the ones they did. Take a look at some studies that were done that maybe question what the results were. And then I was taught by a Jesuit for a while, so I questioned everything. But I do think, you're right. We do have to be concerned about our climate. To get rid of fossil fuels, to me, we spent too much time talking about that in the past on this show, and we continue to because Josh is the conspiracy thinker in the group, and I'm not that way, but I will ask him sometimes if I think it's a conspiracy, and it gets to me and I think it is, it probably is, and that's when I'll ask Josh. But, I just think kids have a lot to worry about. What about housing, too, right?
Well, before we go there, I was going to say, the second law of thermodynamics tells us, things are wearing out. And the longer that we go along, the more worn out things are going to be. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Are you for fossil fuels or against them?
Oh, I'm for them.
I thought this was going to be your segue to electric vehicles.
No. My segue to electric vehicles was, how do you make the electricity through coal, And I'll be darned if I'm going to turn down my air conditioner because we don't have electricity for your car. I don't even want to I'm definitely for fossil fuel. Yeah.
So housing, I think that Republicans have agreed that there's a need, and I think that probably everyone in the state agrees, there's a need for affordable workforce housing, whatever that looks like, but also that we give people the opportunity to have jobs that would be able to meet inflation and give them the success of the American dream that we used to have. Yeah. Kids who used to get, they'd graduate college and, you were almost guaranteed that if you worked hard, you were going to be able to be successful, to take care of your own housing and such. And I mean, I was on Elm Street earlier today and walking down, and the number of people who appeared to be unemployed and unhoused was alarming, considering even just 5 or 10 years ago.
Sure. Yeah, and that's, the schools I heard on one of the radio stations where the state will now give food for kids I hope, maybe it was in Boston station, I don't know, but in the summer, the kids don't have the ability to get food from the schools because they're not open. So they want to provide food for these kids 2 meals a day.
So that's something, JP, that actually has been going on in New Hampshire, and I'm not sure if the program is still there, but at least here in southern New Hampshire, so there's Southern New Hampshire services where you would go if you have a need for fuel assistance. They're usually affiliated with the WIC office. And so the WIC office, from ages 0 to 5, you would go to get vouchers for different foods.
What is the WIC office? I'm not sure of that.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. That is women, infants, and children. Okay. And it takes care of children 0 to 5, depending, it's income dependent, and provides things like milk, healthy cereals,
Do they provide for them while their mom's working, or are these kids that are not?
No, this is any children
kid.
under a certain income level. I think it's 200% of poverty. At least it was at the last point that I checked.
Yep.
And at the time, it was a voucher system that you would bring in. I'm not sure how it's delivered now. And there were periodic visits where you'd bring the child in to be weighed and just screened for any health issues that might be going on, lead paint. Poisoning. Cool. And then that gap year, when they were 5 to 6, they were able to have something called commodity surplus foods, which seniors also can take advantage of as well, and I believe is also income dependent. And that is very interesting to me, but it's I believe it works that agricultural, like farmers who receive subsidies, some of that food goes into this commodity surplus food situation. So they might have cans of meat and different blocks of cheese, different items like that. So those would take care of that gap year before you go to school. In the summertime, they had at least one meal a day at least in the Nashua area, where you could go meet a volunteer or a worker from Southern New Hampshire Services, and there would be like bag lunches that were for school-age children.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. So it's something that we've done in New Hampshire. That was happening back 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I was amazed at how many kids or families, rather, don't have enough food. I just find that crazy. I mean, go to a restaurant and see what they scrape off your plates, and, some of it probably hasn't even been touched, and I just find that terrible that continues to go on. And we should be able to do that.
No, and I think it would be good if people who are listening to your show don't know how to get in touch with those services. If maybe we could do a little research and see, or they could find the appropriate agencies.
Yeah, I mean, if you would want to get back to me with that, I'll bring it up to the next show, and at least let them know, and we'll get a chance for you to say that at the end anyway, to tell them how the best way to do that. So that was. Pretty much inflation certainly was something that was on my mind. You can see I wrote, look at this, isn't that a great picture? You can't see that, but I used to have an English bulldog, and I love the pictures of them. So that's, pretty much, I think, what I was trying to get to try to find out what you're doing. But I'm sure you have other things that you'd like the people to know that I've certainly missed. But we have time.
Yes. So like I mentioned, that we've just had filing period for those who are running for office, and we have a good number of women who are running from our organization, all the way from congressional candidates down to state
So
rep.
Who's the congressional candidate?
Congressional candidates that I know of who are members of our organization. In CD1, Holly Novoletsky is a member.
Oh, okay.
And in CD2, Lily Tang Williams is a member.
Okay.
And then Chuck Morse is an associate member.
Chuck is.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, we gave Chuck an award. He was associate member of the year. He received the Dick Hinch Award.
Oh, nice.
He did. It was a brand new award.
I saw that. Yeah, that's awesome. And that's great that you're honoring Dick Hinch.
Yeah, so Dick Hinch was the most dedicated member of the New Hampshire Federation of Republican Women on the associate side, and was incredibly supportive of our organization.
I once signed a bus. The group brought in a bus.
Rosie.
Yeah.
Rosie the bus.
Yeah, and I don't even remember what they spoke at an organization for the...
It was a lilac luncheon.
Yeah, it was a lilac luncheon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was a big bus outside. I'm sure that signature's gone by now, but that's okay.
I don't know where that bus is.
I have no idea.
Scrappy by now.
So you have some candidates in it.
We do. And when the dust settles, we'll see exactly how many, but members of every club stepped up to run. We have members who are running for delegate to the Republican convention, just to get their feet wet a little bit.
Yeah.
And we had a really good fundraising year last year, so we'll be able to support.
So how do you raise funds? I know you have do you still have the luncheon?
So the Lilac Luncheon usually is our primary fundraiser, and then last year, with so many people coming in and out of the state, we were able to continue to have several others. And of course, last year was an exceptionally good fundraiser. We were able to host Donald Trump for our Lilac Luncheon.
Oh, wow. That's right. I forgot.
Was probably one of the best experiences of the last 25 years with the Federation, I think, yeah.
And of course, women won't vote for him. Let's just make that clear. But
I think some of are, JP?
No, I think a lot of them will. But that's the comments that the Democrats constantly make, is that he doesn't do well with women, black people, or Hispanic people. And, if you look at the polls, it depends. And I always use this statement. I don't really believe in polls, by the way, because of what she was vice president, Sarah Palin. Remember her? Mm-hmm. When she was asked about polls, she said, polls are only good for two things: exotic dancing and cross-country skiing. So when anybody asks me about polls, that's what I tell them, because I really believe that. I don't think they mean much of anything. I mean, no one thought Donald Trump could win. The polls were all against him. Mm-hmm. So I think we're doing a reverse of that, is the polls are going against our president, our current president, even though they're going to say, the only thing they're going to say is that Donald Trump is a convicted felon 34 times, I mean, and that's just, I actually said this at one time: would I vote for a felon? Not knowing any of this was going to happen, just thinking about that, like early on, if they could lock somebody up who was running for office, would I vote for him? And that's a tough question, it really is. But you have to look at the alternatives too. And then you have to look at the case. I think the juries did their job. I really do. I think that part of it worked. A lot of the other parts didn't work. And like even where it was held, I mean, you can't hold a trial in a town that hates the person, or in a town where people were running against him, right? Saying, well, when I'm when I'm elected, I'll take care of Donald Trump. So that kind of stuff is really weird. But I don't think hopefully tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's gotten to that point yet in our state.
Well, it's funny.
No, you had him on. So what was it like?
Oh, for our Live Luncheon?
Yeah. What was it like?
It was phenomenal. It was sold out. We had such great energy. Room full of women and some men. We let them in too. And his message was incredibly well received.
Good.
I think that we have to put aside some of the smoke and mirrors and the theatrics and window dressing around this election and look at why people are choosing Donald Trump. Because we had, I don't know, a dozen or more options. I sat down with all of them at the table.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, each one of them, the people of New Hampshire and this country as a whole, didn't pick them.
Right.
The things that are on their minds, the issue of the economy and rapid inflation that's increasing at a pace we can't keep up with from an employment standpoint.
Right.
The issues at the border, where you have people coming in, known, criminals, violent criminals in their own country being sent here, people with mental issues that need to be addressed in a different way, just being dumped across the border and resulting in violent crimes against American citizens. It's not good, and that's where people are. They're looking at what is happening with our country, and when you look at even Afghanistan and what happened with the retreat there, we don't have a strong military. And it's interesting, the thing that is often pointed out is, well, if we have Donald Trump, he's such a wild card that we'll have these wars all over the world. Well, that's not what happened. So we know with Donald Trump what will happen in a Donald Trump presidency, because we've had one.
Yeah.
And we saw peace, and we saw a stable economy, and we saw borders beginning to be closed, a wall being built. And I think the reason that people across this country are saying we don't care about felonies is because they're saying we care about having a president who can do the things that need to be done in this country. And we don't see anyone else.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at the comparisons, how things were when Donald Trump was president versus Biden in the same length of time, I mean, it's drastic. And to see, I feel sorry for the president. I think, I'm old enough now to run for president, though, but I feel sorry for him, because you don't want to see that happen to anyone, whether it's the president or not. Mm-hmm. And, Josh and I kid each other because we'll forget things while we're sitting here, but at least we have a cover. I have none tonight, but I'll get through this. But anyway, I just think that it's sad to see that. And somebody said this I look at on Dish, you can watch all of the media at one time, like they're in little squares, right? So I'll switch from MSNBC to Fox, which is right in the middle, and then CNN, and talking about what's going on. And it's amazing the difference of what's going on. Like the two liberal stations were saying, do you really want a wild card in office, a person that's crazy, to have his finger on the nuclear button? And I'm thinking, wait a minute, wait a minute. No, I want somebody that can't find his seat, that his wife has to grab his hand, make sure he doesn't fall. I want him to be the one with his hand on the button. So, I mean, you have to look at both sides, and a lot of people don't do that. I think we can all get locked into one station. And I probably watch Fox more than any of them, but I do want to know what the other people are saying, because it's insane. It's like this morning, the news showed Palestinian protesters in Times Square in New York yelling, long live Intifada, screaming it. And it's amazing. I looked at the other stations, nothing. They didn't cover it, not even for 2 minutes, not even to say, well, there's some things going on now. And we need to know that. Now, can we do anything about it? Sure. Just make sure when you go to vote, you pick the person that will take care of you. So you're absolutely right. I mean, we know what Trump had done. I haven't been a huge Trump supporter, except voting for him. That's some support. I worked in New York City, so I understand. And so when people say he's really gruff and he's punching back all the time, hey, listen, if you work in New York City and you don't push back, they don't respect you at all. They're going to walk right over you. So when he started doing that, that's not what bothered me. It didn't bother me at all, because I could see that's because you don't have to like the person, right? You don't have to like the way he talks, but you want to see results, because that's the main thing. They can say a lot of things, right? But unless they produce, I mean, so I'm glad you had a great turnout for that.
We did. And
who got that organized for you? Who made the contact?
We organized that first.
I know, but I meant who got the contact to reach the person? You called them directly yourself, or?
So that is something that, like, our last president, Elizabeth Girard, worked on, and I helped her with that proposal, and they came. Well,
he jumped on that, I'm sure, to meet with all women who are conservative. And
it was just really a great experience, a great opportunity. So
who do you have this year?
We're not
Can't tell me. That's going to be a secret for a while, right? But you do great things. I don't want to miss anything that you're so focused on that our viewers need to hear, because this show basically tries to support Republicans and organizations that help Republicans. But we don't always have the same view, but we all have the same result. We're pushing for the same result, right? So I think that's important. So is there one or two things we still have, some time? So
let's see.
If not, I brought a deck of cards with me.
No, I'm trying to think of. So obviously, we're focused primarily on electing Republicans in New Hampshire this year. I think that's going to take some getting out the message and bringing different factions of the party together so that we can work together on that. So that we're committed to.
Are you concentrating on the House or on everything?
I think everything. I would love to see us continue to have the corner office, and I'm sorry, I know we're sitting in Manchester, but my sister was living here in Manchester during COVID. They had spent years and years saving to buy their dream house, which is a sweet little Victorian up in the North End, up by Old Hampshire Dame College, and loved that house. It was perfect. She has 12 children.
Your sister has 12 children.
12 children, and she had this big Victorian place for everybody, and it was the perfect life. And COVID came, and my sister was a labor and delivery nurse over at the Elliott, and her husband was working as an electrician, and sometimes she would have an overnight shift, and they had people coming up to their driveway, breaking into their cars and taking things, and her fear was that, if they had to leave the children, even though the oldest was in his 20s, so it wasn't leaving little children. They're now
still distressing.
Yeah, I think their ages were like 2 to 22 at the time, and so probably 10 months into COVID, they just, because of the displacement of homeless persons up along the river,
Yes.
and them coming up and breaking into the houses in their neighborhood, they made the decision to sell their home and move to South Carolina.
So they're in South Carolina now.
And so we have families leaving the city who would be good contributing members of the community. And I just think that the failure to address the drug and homelessness crises here in the city give me huge pause over putting that person in the corner office of this state, especially when she's laser focused on an issue that currently has a solution that everyone's generally happy with. So the problem here in New Hampshire, how are you going to deal with border issues? Because we do have a border.
Sure.
How are you going to deal with drugs coming up from our southern neighbors and down from our northern? Those drugs that are making, I think, our homeless crisis so much worse.
It is.
What are you going to do to help the veterans here in this? You know, we've seen in the city what is going to happen in the whole state. So I think for me, sitting in Manchester at this moment, the most important thing is that we bring a Republican back into the corner office, whichever one of them comes through the primary.
Yeah.
I think that, Annie Custer has retired, so that CD2 seat is more open than it's been since Charlie Bass was around.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see a Republican return to that seat.
I think we need to look at the demographics better. Like, Charlie wasn't the most conservative Republican in the state. However, he could win because he was more moderate. And we forget that. We end up electing people in primaries that we like. They're our favorite people, right? But they don't stand a chance to win the general. And the Democrats even push a certain person, as we had discussed earlier outside in our green room, which really isn't green, but it's not even a room, actually. But you know what I'm saying? It's like so they'll push for us to gear in on this one person too. And I've noticed where there's the supervisor checklist in my small town of Deering. She told me there were only a couple of people who switched to go to independent, and she said, and they were both Democrats because they want to mess with our primary a little. I really believe that because there's more, as you know, there's more independents in the state than either one of the other parties. It's like 30%, 30, and then 40. Yeah, and so when everybody says we have to get the independent vote, first of all, we need to define the demographics of the area and who will appeal to those people before we go do the thing. And here's the other gripe, it's rant night. The other gripe I have is that we attack each other more than the Democrats attacked us. And then what happens is when we win, whoever wins, they have all of this ammunition to use for commercials. Why? When will we ever learn that? Or will we ever learn that we can't continue to beat up each other and then expect to win the general? The time frame in between the primary and the general is very short in our state, as you know. So if you were a fan of, let's say, Trump, and I was a fan of DeSantis, if I really am angry that you won, you're not going to convince me to vote for you, right? I mean, that's what happens. And then we lose. I hope you can do that. I hope that's what you can do, that you can get out there and talk some sense into some of these groups that is our favorite person. We love him or her, But here's who we're running against. It'd be like a horse trainer going to the Derby and knowing that his horse is really, really slow, but we're going to get in it anyway. We have no chance of winning, and then getting all these people to support him to put his horse in the race, and he's last. I mean, it's not quite that simple, but you know what I'm getting at. Do you see that as an issue, or is that just me?
No, the work is done ahead of time to identify the best possible candidates that we can put in each place, and now it's up to the Republican voters from now till the primary to vet candidates and look at who can do the job where they live and choose them. And then once that happens, then the day after the primary, we really do need to come right back together to get those people elected. And back to Charlie Bass, the thing I've always thought Charlie did better than anyone I've ever seen was constituent services.
Oh yeah, I agree.
You know,
I agree.
And when you win people one story at a time, that story has ripples. So
Exactly.
My childhood best friend, her father was a widower, and he met and fell in love with a girl in Mexico and wanted to marry her, so he married her. Couldn't get her back across the border because even though they were married and everything was fine, the line for immigration was down a block, around the corner. You couldn't get anyone to even listen to you to figure out what paperwork you needed. And he called Charlie Bass's office, and someone came walking down, and just within an hour, not even, I want to say it was more like 15 minutes down, grabbed them out of line, took care of their paperwork, come right this way, and they were on their way and headed home within the day.
That's a great story. You know, that's awesome. And that's really, I mean, you should be able to ask our congressmen, women, to help you. It doesn't matter what party you're in. They're there to represent us too. And it doesn't always go that way, certainly, as we know, but it also doesn't work the other way. I mean, it doesn't work the other way either. I mean, we have a tendency to do the best we can to try, and Charlie Bass is a perfect example. I mean, he was excellent at that. I mean, same thing with Chris Sununu. I mean, you can, there's people who don't like him, but he's his own man, number one, but he's in it for the right reason. He wants to do what's good for everybody in the state, and sometimes that pulls him in a direction we don't like, right? But realistically, he does. I called the senator's office the other day because I have a friend who's from Costa Rica, one that goes to my church, and he's 80 and he married a not that much younger woman, but so he's a citizen of the country now, but he's been trying for 3 years to get his son into the country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for 3 years. And when he contacted the immigration office, you're going to love this. I hate to end on this note, but the thing that drove me crazy was they said to him, "We're taking care of it, don't worry about it. Stop calling us, stop sending us letters, or we'll put you on the bottom of the stack." Wow. And I'm thinking, this is our immigration department saying that to somebody who wants to get here legally? So I kiddingly said to him, you know, I'll pay for a bus trip for him to go and sneak across the border, you know? I mean, I kidded him with that, and the answer was kind of interesting. He said, I would never want to do that. I would never have my son do that. Now, his son is 60, okay?
Wow.
And this particular friend is he's the official translator for the Costa Rican government. He's a bright man. He understands what's going on. It's just bureaucratic, it's red tape. But his son only has 1 more year to stay here because his green card runs out. Mm-hmm. And that's the sad part. And when I called the office here, they said, out of courtesy, you really should just contact Florida. But I wanted some direction, you know, where do I go with this? So that's what I'm doing. I'm contacting DeSantis and seeing if I can help him there. But it's sad that this stuff goes on. We have so many good people that are immigrants in our country, and we kind of forget that. And they really are. They're great. If you've ever seen somebody sworn in, it's unbelievable, right? It's incredible. We only have a few minutes. Why don't you tell people the best way to reach you and anything else you want to tell them? Send you money, whatever.
Sure, you can find all that on our website, nhfrw.org. And you can reach us. You can contact us through the website. You can join through the website.
Well, I wish you luck with your, with all the stuff you're doing, and I hope that people enjoyed this show and that they learned something tonight, because that's one of the reasons why we're on. Next week, I have the former executive director of the party, Todd Chewing on. So chew on that for a while, and we'll see you next week.